Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Going Rounds podcast. I am out of town for work again. But still putting that podcast out because I missed last week, but it was Thanksgiving and I did one the year before, but this year was a little bit different. So I just kind of wanted to take it off and I don't know, take some time away, especially with all of the issues I had the week before. Hopefully there's no technical difficulties this week. I still have some work to do at home with the entire setup, but I think right now I have everything okay for this setup. So I got people listening that are going to let me know hopefully soon. So yeah, I'm hoping everything's working good. So yeah, we're back. There wasn't a ton of stuff going on over the past week in, what is it? What's it been, like 2 weeks? But not a ton. And that happens around the holidays. It's just like everything else. People take time off. It's just not a whole lot happening because everyone's focused on the holidays and if there's ever somewhat of an off season when it comes to MMA and all the events, there's of course there's still events, but there's more time off in between and things just aren't happening as much as they are during every other time. So it's like the only time you can consider it somewhat of an off season, but we still got fights going on and we have a pretty damn good card coming up this weekend. For the UFC, it's a really good card for a fight night. Miesha Tate on the card again. She's on the undercard, but she is in there. There's so many good matchups. Bobby Green, Jalen Turner, Davison Figueiredo, Rob Font, Clay Guida. That fucker is still fighting. I think he's like 50 now, and he's still fighting or pushing 50. I'm not even sure. But we got Dan Hardy's wife in there. So, there's a big array of fighters, well-known and not so well-known. But it's going to be a pretty good card. So I don't want to say unfortunately, but I'm not going to be able to probably watch live because I have an event I have to go to. And, I mean, it should be fun. Get to see a lot of my friends, which is awesome because, it's been a little few and far between where we've all gotten together, but this should be cool. And of course, I'll be checking highlights and maybe turning it on here and there throughout the event because that's what I do. But I'm definitely going to watch the next day, so it should be cool. And of course, I'll see everything that happens. Oh man, I forgot. I can't touch the table. It shakes. So the camera starts shaking. But yeah, I'll be watching and checking that out. And then let's see what else is going on. There's some PFL news. There was a big event last week. That was like the only MMA event that was happening. And it's their 2023 World Championship series. So we'll get into that one here in a few. Bellator and PFL are merging. That was some big news that came through over this time that I was off. And what else? Oh, we got a big BKFC card. So some bare knuckle fighting coming in. They haven't had a really big event for a little bit, so this one's gonna be good. Mike Perry versus Eddie Alvarez, the Underground King, and I guess they're fighting for a belt. It's like the King of Violence or something. I'm not sure exactly what it's called, but I mean, it looks like a pretty cool belt, and it's always fun when they do something like that. It's kind of like the BMF belt at the UFC. I feel like this one is more true to the name, the King of Violence, with the craziness that happens with bare knuckle boxing and stuff like that. So I will take a sip out of my cheapy little cup. Man, that really is white when it comes to those lights. But I have my pre-made travel old fashioned, I guess. It's a Bullet pre-made. You can find it almost anywhere. It's in an orange bottle. Not too bad. I mean, I prefer mine that I make at home and others that I buy, but this will do while I'm here. I'm usually drinking Jack and Cokes, but I brought Well, I brought Pepsi. I didn't bring Coke, but I forgot the Jack. So it's a good thing I saw this bottle and decided to throw it in my bag before I left on Monday morning. Otherwise, I'd be just stuck with only the twisted tea. But I have that too, like always. I could always go buy some Jack to go with my Coke, but I'm covered. This has lasted all week. It works. So, back to MMA. Actually, let's just get into it because, I got a decent amount of things to cover and I'm excited to talk about these fights. So, let's get into it now. Start off with that PFL Bellator merger I was talking about. So, PFL basically has acquired Bellator. And, I talked about in the last one, Bellator 301 event happening and the fact that it might be the last one under the Bellator name. And that's something that I was not sure if it was going to happen or not. Stuff hadn't really been fully confirmed, but it has been now, and everything was released probably last week, if I remember correctly. So, yeah, now Bellator is officially, oh good, my wife says everything's still good, and that's what happened last time. I changed scenes and I lost everything. So she says it's all good. I'm happy about that. So we'll just keep going and just assume it stays good. Let's hope it does. But Bellator will be held up as Bellator still for a little while, apparently, for next year. But PFL is trying to come up with ideas, and they threw out a possible champions versus champions, Bellator versus PFL. But PFL doesn't have some of the divisions that Bellator has, so that might be a little bit of a complicated thing. I'm sure they're going to figure it out. There's always rumors about what's happening, what's not happening, what's really going to go down. We'll have to just wait and see. But I mean, this is kind of exciting, I would say, in my opinion, because you're going to get like a lot of good fighters all under one umbrella. But that's also, on the flip side, kind of bad, because it means less places for other fighters to go. The UFC is the elite of the elite. That's like the major leagues, right? PFL, Bellator, everything else has always been considered the B leagues. And I just messed up my headphones. And but it was another place to negotiate with. If the UFC didn't want to let go of somebody because they're a current champ or they're a star, they would sign them before they could become free agents, so that other organizations didn't even have the opportunity to scoop them up. But now that we have one less, which was technically considered number 2 Bellator in the MMA grand scheme of things, now it's under PFL, which could make them a powerhouse if they do things correctly. That's what the owner of PFL is saying, is that they are going to become the MMA powerhouse that's going to be at least equivalent to the UFC. I don't know that I see that happening, not in the near future at least. The UFC just continues to grow. They continue to just kill it, basically. They have all the stars, they have the biggest fighters, and if they don't, they acquire them at some point in time. Or if they lose somebody, they almost always get them back. Francis Ngannou's the wild card in that statement, because it seems like they might not ever get him back with the way that things went down with that relationship. But for the most part, 99% of the top of the elite of the elite fighters are in the UFC. So with this happening, if they can combine the two organizations together with the talent that they have, it could become great. But people aren't too keen on the season thing, the playoffs, the championships that PFL put out there. Bellator has been just crippled in the promotional kind of sector of everything. They don't promote very well. Their posters are boring. Their events are pretty decent for the most part. You know, they're flashy. The fighters can have their own. The fighters can wear whatever they want and stuff like that. They can walk out with, you know, like props and stuff like that, just like old school UFC. But now under PFL, that's going away. Apparently, they're going to be wearing the uniforms like everyone else does in PFL and stuff like that. So it kind of sucks when it comes to that, and I doubt they're going to have their own sponsors and things like that, because it doesn't seem like the PFL really does it that way. But who knows? So I guess we'll have to wait and see what's actually going to go down, how it's going to work out. But I feel like there's ups and downs, pros and cons to all of this. In the end, I just hope it works out for the fighters, because that's who's important. They're the ones that put their, you know, minds and bodies on the line, and you know, their life is revolved around their fights. And I just want them all to make really good money and stop having to worry about other things, juggling like 16 things in life just to make it when they're, you know, a professional fighter that is on a nationally, sometimes internationally covered, you know, TV, and yet they don't get paid anything. So like, I hope, if nothing else, that this makes it good for the fighters, and that everybody with Bellator and PFL works out well. And who knows, we'll see what happens in the future with maybe other organizations making their way up to become a number 2 or a number 3, instead of just the PFL having reign in that second spot and the UFC not being able to be touched ever. But I guess we'll see. We'll find out. But sticking on that PFL subject, they had their World Championships of this year last week on Friday. And you know, you can always watch these on ESPN and ESPN Plus. This one was actually a pay-per-view. It seems like that's what they do. They're not big in the pay-per-view model, but it sounds like they're trying to get there and be able to be in that spot like the UFC is. But again, it takes a while for somebody to be able to bring up their organization and get well known like the UFC is. You know, a lot of people don't even say MMA. They say, "Oh, you do UFC," which I can't stand that. But you know, hardcore fans, they understand the difference. People that just see it on TV and it's a thing that passes by them is just something that they say. But the UFC is that big. It's just like the NFL for football and the NBA for basketball. You know, there's not much else that's talked about outside of those organizations. But yeah, they had their World Championships. It was a pay-per-view event. Lots of big names, lots of titles on the line, and $1 million purses being handed out left and right. And it also marked the return of Kayla Harrison. She's been out for, I think, about a year, if not longer. So she finally came back and fought again. Let me see. I'm actually curious now when. Oh yeah, November, almost a year exactly, was her last fight, which she lost, and that was her first professional loss. So she bounces back a year later, gets a win. We'll cover that here in just a minute. But that was one of the big featured fights, as well as all of these other fights that had titles on the line and, you know, big money on the line. So let's see who else is at the bottom of the card. Notables. Nobody really, until you get to one of the ones I wanted to cover, which is Derek Brunson, former UFC fighter. It made his debut in the PFL, and you know, he became a free agent and now is over in the PFL and constantly asking for a fight with Jake Paul. So he's trying to do big things. But Derek Brunson, he's a badass, man, and he's got that blonde hair. So Blonde Brunson is alive and well in the PFL and dominating too. He fought Ray Cooper III, who is a well-known name in the PFL world. So this went all 3 rounds, went to a decision, but Derek Brunson winds up getting a win and dominating. And yeah, Ray Cooper's not an easy opponent, but Derek Brunson was able to pull it out. This was a catch weight fight. They fought at 187. I'm not actually sure what that was about, but I don't know. I think this might have been a short notice fight or something, but yeah, catch weight fight. Nothing big on the line, just, you know, the debut of Derek Brunson and seeing if, you know, UFC guys can come in and do well in the PFL. And it hasn't been so great in the past with Anthony Pettis and stuff, but yeah, Derek Brunson came in, made a splash, and did well, and gets the win. So Blonde Brunson at it again. And then we get to Kayla Harrison, as I was saying before, fighting another former UFC fighter, Aspen Ladd, who was released from the UFC and found her way into the PFL. And I believe she has one fight before in the PFL, maybe two. Oh, just kidding. She had that was her fourth fight in the PFL. She's 2-2 so far. So she has a win over Julia Budd, and now she has a loss to Kayla Harrison, but she did get some hits in there on her, as you can tell here. This is one of those perfectly timed pictures that makes somebody's face look pretty deformed. It's kind of a brutal picture, but it is you know, just a little taste of Aspen Ladd getting a little bit of Kayla Harrison. But in the end, Kayla, you know, did what she does, and she is so well-rounded and, you know, kind of does a little bit of everything. Kicking, punching, groundwork. You know, she's a judoka, so she does judo as well, so she could throw your ass. And she's one of the most dominant women in MMA right now. And with this Bellator merger, with Chris Cyborg being in Bellator, this could mean that we might see a fight between Kayla Harrison and Chris Cyborg, which is something that's been talked about for a while. Chris Cyborg was trolling her, bought a website in her name that takes you to, if you click on KaylaHarrison.com, it takes you to like Chris Cyborg highlights or something. So Chris Cyborg being a troll. But yeah, they're trying to set that fight up, but they're saying that maybe Cyborg should be fighting Larissa Pacheco first, who beat Kayla Harrison last year and is continuing doing well and winning. So they're saying that might be the fight to make before Kayla, and Kayla could fight the winner, but who knows? In the end, Kayla Harrison's back. Who knows for how long, though, because there is talks about her leaving the PFL and possibly making her way over to the UFC. I just hope she keeps fighting. I think she's a great fighter, and I want to see her test herself a little more. It seems like a lot of her competition is, you know, until she met up with Larissa Pacheco, she hadn't really had a lot of competition. Like, everything was just real big, quick, dominant wins for her. So this one was drug out a little longer. She winds up getting a unanimous decision win over Aspen Ladd. But, you know, not before she punishes her throughout the fight. But she gets to come back after a year of being off and gets the win. And we'll see what happens next for her. But it's good to see her back, and hopefully we have those big fights coming through. You know, it was the biggest ones being talked about was Kayla Harrison versus Amanda Nunes, for obvious reasons, being, you know, that they were at the top of their divisions, both champions at one point in time. And Chris Cyborg is always in the mix of that because she's so dominant as well. And even though she's lost a few times in her career, she still is one of the biggest names and one of the best female fighters in MMA. So we'll see what they do with all of that. Now let's move on to yet another former UFC fighter, Impa Kasanganay, who a few years ago got brutally knocked out by one of the most viral head kicks that was around back then. And that was by Joaquin Buckley, who, you know, he tried to kick Impa in the, I think in the body or something, and he caught the kick, and then Joaquin Buckley like used him catching the kick as leverage and did some crazy turnaround, like spinning back kick type thing to Impa's head and knocked him out cold. It was a crazy knockout. I'm sure if you haven't seen it already, you can find it easily. Impa Kasangane is hard to spell, but if you look up Joaquin Buckley head kick KO, I'm sure you'll find it. But yeah, he turns from getting basically pushed out of the UFC because he wasn't doing so well to now being a PFL champion and winning lots of money because now he won his fight against I'm sorry, I just totally got, where is, oh, Joshua Silva. But yeah, Impa is like far progressed as a fighter, and he's doing well in the PFL. So it's good to see that. Being a former UFC fighter, of course, all the talking shit of everybody saying, "Oh, Dana dropped the bag on this one," and Dana, you know, is constantly missing out on all the big names, and people need to leave the UFC to become big. And it's like, well, maybe, but you know, what was happening currently during the time that he was in the UFC wasn't doing so well. So it is what it is. Maybe they should have given him more chances, but now he's evolved and become a better fighter and is now a champion. So when it comes down to it, maybe he'll make his way back into the UFC. Maybe at some point in time we'll have some cross promotion, PFL, Bellators versus UFC type stuff. I don't know, but that's just it's just what it is. Sometimes fighters have to leave the UFC when they don't do well in the beginning of their career to, you know, kind of get stable and figure out what kind of fighter they are and who they're going to be, and then turn it into a great career and maybe wind up in the UFC becoming a champion there later on down the road. Doesn't always have to happen right away. There's a lot of fighters that started with not so great records and wound up becoming champs and some of the best fighters in the UFC and in MMA overall. So, you know, Impa's out there doing his thing and, you know, finding his way and doing a lot better than he was in the UFC, that's for sure. And of course, there's always those the talk about the PFL not having the same kind of competition, the level of competition that the UFC brings. But I mean, at this point in time, a lot of these guys train together. They have top of the line coaches and teams that they work with. So I think, you know, I think it's more about the quality of the promotion than it is about the fighters. And I think the UFC has been around for so long and they've been so well known for so long that it's just going to be hard to catch up. So everyone's going to be seen as a lower level than the UFC until it's proven. I mean, the fights have to happen in order to prove it. So I don't know if we'll ever see that, but for now, we'll continue to see UFC fighters going to these other organizations and winning championships and, you know, doing well for the most part, or maybe not, maybe staying on that mid-tier level and just kind of fighting through their career, trying to make it further. Some guys just can't find their way, but some guys leave the UFC and really find their way, and Impa Kasangane is one of those guys, and he's doing that right now. So congrats to him on getting that win. It was a unanimous decision win over Joshua Silva. And yeah, he gets that belt wrapped around his waist, and that cowboy hat, man. It's a whole other thing. Someone with his name wearing a cowboy hat is unexpected. So it's just funny to me. I don't know. It's just like if you saw me in a cowboy hat, which I've worn one in the past, but if you know me, I don't really get into wearing cowboy hats. So if you see me with one, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, this is weird. That's kind of how I feel about seeing him with a cowboy hat on. But moving on, we have Magomed Kirimov versus Sarabusi, who Sarabusi has been killing it lately in the PFL. He's been having really great fights throughout the playoffs. He was on, oh jeez, here it goes. He was on a 7 fight win streak until he met Magomed Kira. That's a tough name, man, especially when you have it like when you have to say it twice but add something to the end, it's tough. So anyway, he fights Magomed. You know, exchanges, of course, everyone gets some punches in here and there, but Magomed just was too much for Tsarukyan, and it went to the third round, but in the end, Magomed winds up getting the best of him and takes his back here, winds up getting in that good position, gets him in this deep guillotine, and winds up subbing him. So yeah, he had him wrapped up good. He had the legs behind, wrapped around his waist and crossed up behind his back, and had, oh man, he's just bending him, and that's a tough submission right there. I don't know how anybody could get out of that. And of course, Tsarukyan had to tap out, and Magomed gets the win. $1 million and a title, so not too bad for him. Let's see, that was in the welterweight division. I want to see what Magomed's. Oh yeah, he's been on a pretty big win streak too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this makes 6 wins in a row for Magomed. I think he's only lost like once in the PFL. Yep. So yeah, congrats to him getting that title, that $1 million purse. Not too bad. Moving on to Larissa Pacheco versus Marina Maknat. Fuck man, these names are tough. Marina, we're just gonna call her Marina because I don't know how to say her last name. But Larissa Pacheco, this was a featherweight title fight, and Pacheco was the one that beat Kayla Harrison to mess up her undefeated record last year and put Kayla on the sidelines for a year. I'm assuming because she just felt like she needed a break, especially after losing. But I'm sure that kind of was part of it too, is losing after not losing ever is tough to swallow. So Kayla has a lot of stuff going on outside of fighting, and I guess she decided to take a break. So yeah, Larissa Pacheco being the one to send her on a hiatus and break that unbeaten streak that Kayla Harrison had. So she moves in and has won a few fights, I believe, throughout the year, and winds up here for another title fight. Let's see, she fought 3 other times this year, April, June, and August, with wins over Julia Budd, Amber Leibrock, and Elena Colinet. Oh man, I can't say that word either. Or I can't say that name either. But yeah, 3 wins brings her to this title fight, and she gets the win here as well. She did get put in this nasty leg lock though, but made her way out of it. Winds up landing some heavy punches, which she's good with those hands, man. She's got those heavy hands, big punches that she lands on girls that might not be used to getting landed on as heavy as she can drop those hammers on people. But yeah, she winds up getting that title, the $1 million purse, and continues dominating in her division. So who knows? We'll see if we get a Larissa Pacheco and Kayla Harrison rematch. Maybe Cyborg getting thrown in the mix there. A little bit of a winner of the fight between 2 of them fights the other one. Who knows? But that is a pretty exciting division, watching those girls at the top there doing what they do and fighting as they do. So Larissa Pacheco continuing on that win streak with the big wins and the title, getting that belt. So moving on, yet another, that's some weird sounds, yet another former UFC fighter, Olivier Aubin-Mercier. What am I hearing? Oh, must be the car outside. It sounded really weird with my headphones on though. But yeah, OAM coming in, doing what he does as well, has been on a tear since he left the UFC, doing very well in the PFL. And I mean, the Canadian gangster, you know, he's one of those guys that took a chance, left the UFC. He's got a 21-5 record. I believe. Yeah, so he lost 3 in a row in between 2018 and 2019 in the UFC, and then moves over to the PFL in 2021 and is undefeated in the PFL. How many fights is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-0 in the UFC. I mean, I'm sorry, in the PFL since he left the UFC, and he's undefeated and continues. I think this might be his second or his third championship win, for $1 million, by the way, too. So he's doing well for himself, getting paid a lot more, I'm sure, than he was in the UFC. And he fought Clay Collard, who is no punk either. I mean, he's been killing it as well. Let's see. He was on a 3-fight win streak before he met OAM. So, and they were fighting for the lightweight championship. Olivier Aubin-Mercier winds up getting the win, though, dominating everywhere. And then let's see. Yeah, it was a decision win, so it went all 5 rounds. But as you can see here, he was dominating positions all the way through the fight. And I like some of the pictures they got here with these overviews of the cage. It seems like there's quite a few of them coming from this event. So I don't know, I always enjoy those pictures from above like that, especially in the positions that they're in with the submissions or walking away from a knockout or something. But yeah, OAM gets the win in the end. Another $1 million purse for him, as well as a title. Now he's talking about taking a break. It almost sounds like he's retiring from what he's saying. Sounds like he doesn't really get the rush that he used to get. And one of his mentors and idols is George St. Pierre, and I guess he's talked to him before about it. And, you know, uh-oh. My air just turned on, and I hope that's not really loud. But my flag is flying all over the place. So hopefully it turns off quick. It's turned on like 3 times since I've been here. And of course, as soon as I start on the podcast, it turns on. Yeah, it seems like the mic's not picking up the air very much, but it's messing up the aesthetics here. So this is kind of shitty. Hopefully it turns off soon, because I can't reach the spot to turn it off myself. So anyway, we'll deal with the flag flying in the back. I forgot my backdrop too. Like normally I have the entire backdrop. You won't even see what's behind me, but as you could tell, right here you could see a bed. Over here you could see the curtains and the AC. I forgot the stupid backdrop. I don't know how I did that. But of all things to forget, that's one of the ones I can deal with. At least I brought the flag. The air just turned off, so now it's not flying around anymore. But I thought it was pretty funny. At least I have something, though, instead of just seeing, like, the stupid background. I'm in a decent hotel, so I can't complain too much. Some of the other ones I go to do not have great-looking backgrounds. If I were to try to use that as my background in the podcast, it would suck. So, anyway, congrats to OAM getting that win. That wraps it up for the PFL World Championship for this year. We'll see what they do with the Bellator merger coming up. I mean, it's confirmed and done already. So we'll see what they do this upcoming year with all of the fights and where they take all of this. And I'm curious to see what fighters stick with the PFL and what fighters might make their way out and wind up maybe in the UFC. Some of the big names that have been thrown around, Michael Venom Page. It's been rumored that he's close to signing with the UFC. That's about one of the only ones I've heard for now, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So let's get to the big BKFC fight happening this weekend. This will be happening Saturday as well. I think this one's going to be going on probably later than the UFC event, I would assume. 8 p.m. Eastern. So that's probably what, 6 o'clock Arizona time. Let's see what time the UFC. Yeah, the UFC main card starts at 5. So it's not really competing with the UFC, but it's happening in the same night. So, you know, it's always tough when there's 2 events happening at the same time and one of them's the UFC. Whoever the secondary event is seems to have struggle with viewership. But with this one being separated enough, I mean, the beginning of the card might not get a lot of views, but once you get to this main event, which is Eddie Alvarez versus Mike Perry, yeah, that should be good. And I bet a lot of people will tune in for that one. So let's see. I want to see if I can find. I want to make sure I find the exact name of the belt I was talking about. I'm pretty sure they said it was the King of Violence. Let's see if I can actually get this to work. Let's see. Middleweight main event. I hate it when they don't put it right there. I'm on the BKFC site, okay? And first of all, they don't put full names. It's always just the last names, which is very irritating. But also they don't put all of the information, and that makes it tough too. Now I'm gonna see if I can just search. If I can just search just for the what belt it is. Of course. Platinum belt. No, that's Mike Perry's own belt. He's going to make Jesus, why is this so difficult? Oh, it is King of Violence. Inaugural King of Violence belt. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I had that right. It sounded right to me, but you know, yeah, I mean, it's cool that they have a belt. I mean, Eddie Alvarez and Mike Perry are very exciting fighters. Both of their BKFC fights have been very entertaining. Eddie Alvarez, I believe, has only had 1 fight in BKFC, which was against oh great, now I can't find that. This is so strange. It's so hard to find all of the information on BKFC stuff sometimes. Well, it is what it is. I believe he's only fought once in BKFC, and that was against Chad Mendes. And that was a pretty damn good fight. It was exciting. It was what you would expect from those 2 fighters, knowing the names that they are. Both former UFC fighters. Same with Perry right now as well. We have a bunch of former UFC fighters on this card. Jimmy Rivera versus Jeremy Stevens fighting at 155. We have a main. Let's see. We have. Oh, Jimmy Rivera versus Jeremy Stevens is a co-main event. We have a women's championship fight between another former UFC fighter, Beck Rawlings, versus Christine Ferreira. We have a, let's see, 145 title fight between Kai Stewart and Howard Davis. A 265, so a heavyweight title fight between Arnold Adams and Mick Terrell. And then let's see. I know we had. What the hell? Ben Rothwell and Todd Duffy. But I don't see them on here. So what the hell is that about? Man, you have to go to like 3 different sites to find all the information for these fights. And that's a damn shame. But bear with me because I'm getting to it right now. I just want to make sure I'm accurate with what I'm talking about here. And I would have had all this already had the 2 sites I had up had all the information. It's pretty strange that it didn't. Okay, so Stewart versus Davis. Adams versus Terrell. Stevens versus Rivera. Wow, did the Ben Rothwell fight get canceled? This is really weird. Again, promotion-wise, you have to keep up. Like the UFC makes a lot of changes. They have a lot of last-minute replacements. Sometimes they cancel fights, but you will know. Like if you go to their website and you look at UFC events, it'll break down the card for you, as far as like let you know who's fighting for what, and it'll tell you what time in your area, and at the bottom of the card it'll tell you what fights have been canceled, so you can see the former opponents of any of the people that are fighting on the card that might have new opponents, like late replacements or if they got added to the card late. Doesn't matter, they'll show all that. You can't find that with some of these other websites for some of these other organizations. Like the best thing you can do is give all information that's pertinent to what you're looking for. And you know, with BKFC, you look at their website and it just says Perry at the top. It says middleweight main event, Perry versus Alvarez. It shows Perry's record at being 3-0, Alvarez being 1-0. They're fighting at it says Perry's 185, Alvarez is 155. I don't even know what weight they're fighting at. So this is what's wrong with some of these organizations. That's what makes it difficult for them to hang with the UFC, because these, I mean, the website doesn't look bad, but if you go there to look for information on anything, you can't find it on one spot. You look up anything for the UFC and you're going to find exactly what you need. There's dedicated websites that give you more information than even the UFC website gives you. So, you know, there's really no excuse. It's just tough when you're looking for, you know, you're doing a show about these combat sports and you can't find all the information because the websites just suck, or any information isn't out there. And that's weird, because if you want people to be interested in your product, you have to get it out there and you have to give the information. So, you know, maybe I'm not the best with that either, being, you know, holding myself accountable here for my podcast not growing as fast as I wanted to and stuff, but I do everything. Like, it's just me, and I have a regular job and a family, so it's tough. I can only do so much, but these people have employees and divisions and departments of people doing their social media and promotions and all that, and they have money behind it. So they just got to get better. They got to get better at it. I mean, at least they show that it's a belt, but you know, it says women flyweight co-main event. Little stuff like that should be women's flyweight championship co-main event. You know, that's kind of how it should be presented. And it shows that Ferreira is the champ right now because there's a little symbol of a belt next to her name. So that's the only way you can really know that this is a championship bout. I guess you go down to the men's, it says featherweight championship bout, so at least that one tells you. Heavyweight championship belt. So I mean, it's weird. It's just kind of inconsistent. And not as in depth. And then also, you know, this poster right here that I just got yesterday seemed like the most current poster for the event, but yet I don't see Ben Rothwell and Todd Duffy on the website for, you know, the fight card. So did it get canceled? What happened here? Who knows? But anyway, it is what it is. I'm excited for Mike Perry versus Eddie Alvarez. They faced off today after a press conference or something, and it was pretty intense. The first time they faced him off, when they first announced this fight, they got into this little, you know, Mike Perry's kind of a funny guy. He's aggressive a bit, but he's never like super, it's never like just mean stuff. It's always kind of joking manner, but then if somebody pushes him a little bit, he gets into it with them. So, I mean, he almost fought some guy in Russia, so that's pretty crazy. But him and Eddie just kind of pressed foreheads together, and I guess they were trying to break him up or something, and Mike Perry was just like saying something like, just hit me in the body, hit me in the body, or you want to hit, or something like that. So they like exchange body shots. It was very awkward, but it was funny and it was entertaining. And then the face off today was just like them putting their foreheads against each other and being all intense. So I think it's going to be a great fight. It's going to be one of the ones that people are talking about. You're going to see highlights everywhere. It's probably going to be bloody because Mike Perry is always getting bloodied up or bloodying somebody else up. And bare knuckle is just known for that. So should be a fun event. Should be exciting. I will watch whatever I can of it, or I will definitely be looking for those highlights, because anytime Mike Perry fights in bare knuckle, it's exciting and fun and interesting. So that's happening Saturday night. I guess you can watch it on Fight TV or maybe on the BKFC app. I'm not sure. There's a little bit of both things going on here. Like I said, it's hard to tell. Let me see if their website actually shows when or where you can watch. How to watch. Here we go. How clear is it going to be, though? See, it shows Ben Rothwell versus... Okay, this is so annoying. It shows it there, but it didn't show the break. All right, whatever. Ben Rothwell versus Todd Duffy. Both former UFC fighters as well. Heavyweights. That should be exciting. Ben Rothwell has been looking like he belongs in BKFC for sure. So that should be a fun one. Ferreira versus Beck Rawlings should be fun. Both of them are exciting to watch as far as that. Looks like there's 2 total title fights on this card. 1 female, 1 male. Says you can watch on streaming on the BKFC app. So that's how you can watch it. Should be good. Check it out Saturday. And it's probably going to be on after the UFC main card finishes itself. So that should be cool. Check it out if you get a chance. Speaking of the UFC, let's move on to that. We got UFC on ESPN52. This is taking place in Austin, Texas. So I'm sure you're going to see Joe Rogan in the crowd because he's not commentating. I think those are the times he takes advantage of being able to just be a fan and watching in the crowd without the obligation of speaking on a mic. You know, I'm sure he'll be out there on mushrooms and having a drink and having a good time, because that's what it seems like he does these days. So anyway, this is a pretty interesting card, a pretty good card, if you ask me. It's a great way to come back from a break, a great way to come back from the holidays, and it got me excited, that's for sure, seeing how many big names and good matchups are happening on this card. As you can see here on the poster, we got Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. That's an interesting fight. Gastelum moving down a weight class, which he's, not usually good at. He's had trouble with weight in the past, so he's fighting at welterweight, which is 170, after having fought in middleweight for a while. So looks like he's doing better with the weight and doing better with staying fit in between fights. So we'll see how that goes down. We got Rob Font versus Davison Figueiredo, and Figgy hasn't fought anybody in the past like 3 years except for Brendan Moreno with that big quadrilogy fight that they had. Losing the belt back and forth to each other is kind of crazy, but now Figueiredo has moved to the bantamweight division from the not flyweight but flyweight division. And then you got Jalen Turner versus Bobby Green, that being a short notice fight for Jalen Turner. We'll get into that. And then Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan for the main event. That should be an interesting fight. Beneil has been on a tear, and Arman is just a damn good fighter. So, but let's see who we got going on in the bottom of the card. Veronica Hardy versus Jamie Lynn Horth, who is undefeated 6-0 in overall, and Veronica Hardy is 7-4-1. Veronica Hardy is the wife of Dan Hardy, who used to fight in the UFC, was a commentator in the UFC for a while, and then made his way out of the UFC due to some shady shit, I guess, that was happening in the back, and winds up in the PFL, I believe, in the UK division for the PFL. I believe he does stuff for all the events or at the majority of the events. Doesn't matter what section of PFL they're on, but I think he's more prevalent in the UK. Yeah, he works for the PFL, but his wife is now a professional MMA fighter as well, and in the UFC right now. She is, I believe, how many fights has she had? Damn, a lot more than I thought. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fights in UFC, and unfortunately she's 4-2 overall. But she is coming off a win to the Ultimate Fighter champion Juliana Miller that happened back in March. So she's looking to put together a string of wins instead of a lot of losses like she's had in the past. So let's see who else. Wellington Turman versus Jared Gooden. That's a welterweight fight. Let's see who else. Rodolfo Bellator versus Ihor Pretoria. Light heavyweight fight. Joe Solecki versus Drakkar Klose. That should be a damn good fight. Both these guys 13-3 for Solecki, 13-2 for Drakkar. Drakkar was on a podcast earlier today, and he sounds like he's pretty damn focused and ready. So we'll see how that works out, but that should be an interesting one. And then you got Cody Brundage versus Zachary Reese. Zachary Reese is 6-0, Brundage 9-5. And then to top off the undercard, we got Misha Tate coming back and fighting Julia Avila. I believe this is Tate's second fight since her return from retirement. Maybe. I don't know. When did she come back? Anyway, who cares? Her last fight was against Lauren Murphy that she lost back in July last year. So it's been over a year since she fought, and now she's fighting Julia Avila in the main featured fight for the undercard, prelim card. I'm getting all tongue twisted over here. But moving on to the main card, we got Punahele Soriano versus Dustin Stoltzfus. That's a tough name, but it's weird. He's got a very common first name, but a difficult last name. But Punahele Soriano is a Hawaiian dude, pretty funny guy. I listened to him on a podcast this week too. But yeah, we got Soriano is coming off of a loss to Roman Kopylov back in January. So it's been a few months since he's fought. That was a TKO body kick. And but you know, he's got some heavy hands, and he sounds pretty ready to come back and make some headlines and some highlights with this fight against Dustin, however you say his last name, because it's tough. Stoltzfus. He's 14-5. This is a middleweight fight. Let's see. He is coming off of a loss as well to Abus Magomedov back in September of last year. It's been over a year since he's fought as well. TKO lost in the first round to Magomedov. So both these guys are looking to get back in the win column. Both of them are probably hungry to get back in that win column too. So this should be a decent fight to kick off the card. Middleweight fight there. And then we move to Clay Guida, the animal, versus Joaquim Silva. I'm anxious to see if I was right about Clay's age. Let's see. Okay, just kidding. He's not 50, but he's 41. But he looks like he's about 48. But he's a fucking animal. I mean, the dude is a year younger than me, so what the fuck am I talking about? And he's still fighting in the UFC. He's crazy. But he is coming off a loss to Rafa Garcia back in April. He's had kind of a win-loss type record almost all of his career, which is probably why it's been a long time since he's been in contention, but he's still out there fighting and doing the damn thing, so you got to give him credit for that. And a lot of his losses are by decision, so it's not like he's losing horribly, getting knocked out. He's got a submission loss here not too long ago, but nothing crazy, so that's probably why. He takes a lot of damage though, but he's still in there and he's still kicking, man. So Clay Guida is one of those guys I remember from way back in the day. I always just remember how crazy he was with his hair and just how his energy never stops. It's nuts. But he's fighting Joaquim Silva. Oh shit, I pushed the wrong button. There we go. Yeah, Guida I mean, he surprises you with some of the stuff that he does, but he's fighting a younger guy in Joaquim Silva. Not too much younger though. He's only 34. His record is 12-4. He's coming off a loss to Arman Tsarukyan, who's fighting on this card as well. But I mean, Silva's had kind of a record riddled with losses in the near past here, and those are KO and TKO losses. But Clay Guida's not much of a KO TKO guy. He usually outlasts people, out cardios people, wins by decision for the most part. So, but if he can land on Joaquim Silva after wearing him down with that cardio, who knows, maybe he'll earn himself a KO TKO win in this fight, because it looks like Silva's either winning or losing by KO or TKO in almost all of his fights. So he's a few of them gone to decision, submission here and there, but TKO, KO, wins and losses throughout his entire record. So we'll see what he has for Clay Guida, and if he can put some work on him and get himself into that win column. But I don't know, man. This is gonna be a tough one, because Clay is just never quits, and his cardio never goes away. So it'll be a tough one, but should be interesting and fun to watch. Moving on, one of the fights I'm looking forward to: Sean Brady versus Kelvin Gastelum. Gastelum hasn't fought since, work with me here, stupid computer. He fought in April against Chris Curtis. That's right. I was thinking before that he hadn't fought since 2021. So yeah, he fought in April against Chris Curtis. Looked pretty good there. That was a unanimous decision win for him back then. But Sean Brady has just been killing it. He's 15-1 versus Kelvin Gastelum, who's 18-8. Sean Brady is just a killer. His only loss was not that long ago. Actually, he's coming off that one loss that he has on his record, which was a TKO in the second round to Bilal Muhammad, who's been on a tear recently too. So, you can't really be too down on that one, because Bilal's a great fighter, always in contention, and yeah, he's just a great fighter overall. So but he feels bad about that loss, so he's looking to come back and really put his nice exclamation mark next to his name for the next one with a TKO or a KO over Kelvin Gastelum, because he definitely has the power to do that. But I mean, Brady's just a great fighter overall, and he's intense and he's fun to watch when he's fighting. So and he's just one of those up and coming guys that came out of nowhere, a Philly guy. And yeah, I mean, he's tough and he's a great fighter, and I think he's got a lot of good potential if he doesn't let that loss hold him down, because a lot of these guys will be undefeated and then they get that one loss and it just gets in their head. But like I said, he's got those big heavy hands. When he lands hard, and I don't know, Kelvin's been rocked a few times, but he's a pretty durable guy, and he's got some hands of his own. So this is why I'm kind of excited about this fight, because I think it's a good matchup between the two. If Kelvin has a good weight cut and makes weight easily and it doesn't wear him out too bad, then I'm pretty sure that he's gonna do well in this one. Let's see, he is coming off that win to Chris Curtis. Like I said before that, he was on a 2-fight losing streak, so he took quite a while off, But coming in at that lower weight class, it's interesting because he had so much trouble in the past with his weight, just constantly missing weight, or just looking so deteriorated during the weigh-ins and stuff. I mean, they all do for the most part, but you can really tell when some of the ones, certain guys are struggling, or women. But we'll see what Gastelum has coming back off that win, and let's see if he keeps that momentum and hands Sean Brady his second win of his career, or second loss of his career, or if Sean Brady's gonna, you know, make up for that last loss and show Kelvin Gastelum what it's like to be in this lower weight again, because Brady hits hard, and I know Gastelum does too, but he struggles with that weight, and that's what's concerning. So this should be a good one, and I'm excited to see it. Let's move on to another really good one. Rob Font versus Deiveson Figueiredo. Like I said, Figueiredo coming back, or coming up in weight to bantamweight from the flyweight division. Was it flyweight? No, featherweight. God damn, no, it is flyweight. I always do that with those two because let's see, because they both start with an F. I guess that's the only damn that's the only excuse I have. Okay, yeah, so it was flyweight. But yeah, he had, let's see, 4 fights in a row with Brandon Moreno, spanning from 2020 till now. January of this year was the last fight he had with Brandon Moreno, where he lost the title after having beat Moreno before that. So they had a draw, and then Moreno beat him to win the belt, and then Figgy beat Moreno, and then Moreno came back and beat Figgy this year. So he's coming off that loss. He hasn't fought since January, and moving up in weight, you know, sometimes it sounds like a good idea because it means, oh, you don't have to cut weight, and maybe the weight cut isn't as brutal, so he's gonna be able to fight. But a lot of the stuff, maybe his cardio is gonna be affected, or maybe the guys that he's gonna be facing in this higher weight division are gonna be bigger than him, stronger than him, so it might not fare well for Figueiredo. But he's such a great fighter, and he's been a champ for so long that, I mean, there's really no way to know. Some of these guys just can't cut it in the higher weight classes, and some of them do really well and seem like they should have been there in the first place. Knowing Figueiredo, he's gonna do well. Just how well is he gonna do? Is he gonna be able to hang, or is it gonna be kind of a back and forth win lose type thing for him, depending on who he's fighting? If he gets against those bigger opponents, it might be a big problem for him. But Rob Font has been pretty impressive recently. He's 20-7 overall. I want to see what he's done recently. Coming off a loss to Corey Sandhagen back in August. Before that, he had a win over Adrian Yanez. So, I mean, he's got some losses mixed in there, but he's beaten big names like Cody Garbrandt, Marlon Moraes, Ricky Simon, and Sergio Pettis. His losses are to big names too: Jose Aldo, Marlon Vera, Corey Sandhagen, Rafael Asuncao. So, I mean, he's fought a lot of big names. He wasn't babied coming into the UFC, that's for sure. George Roop, Joey Gomez, John Lineker, Matt Schnell, a lot of well-known names that he's fought, and he's always hung in there. So a lot of losses in the past few years, but he's a great fighter. He does have heavy hands, big strikes, and his wins are all like TKO KOs, some decisions mixed in there, couple submissions way back in the day. But for the most part, he's known for his power and his good boxing and kickboxing. So that's something to watch out for when it comes to. But Figueiredo as well, very, very good striker. He had decent power for his weight division when he was still in the flyweight. So he beat Moreno by decision. But let's see, he lost TKO. He's got some submission wins. A lot of submission wins, actually. So he does have heavy hands, but he has a really good submission game as well. As you can see here with this nasty shit, I don't even know. That's definitely a rear naked choke, but kind of modified. He's like bending the shit out of that dude's body, and that does not look comfortable whatsoever. Let's see, that is not Tim Elliott. Is that Joseph Benavidez? No. Who the hell is that? That's what I want to know. Alex Perez. No. It is Benavidez. Rear naked choke. Okay, yeah. So that was in 2020. But yeah, the way he's got him bent is that's a pretty nasty choke and just submission in general. So Font's got to watch out for Figgy on the ground, but Rob Font, if he can keep him up on the feet, I think he's got the advantage there, but not by much. So yeah, this should be definitely a good fight. I'm excited for it, and just to see what Figgy does in that higher weight class is interesting enough for me. And then facing somebody like Rob Font, that's a hell of a test to move up into the weight class for your first fight. So moving on, though, we got Jalen Turner with the late notice fight against Bobby Green. Bobby Green was initially supposed to fight Dan Hooker, but Dan Hooker, I guess, has a arm injury again. So unfortunately, I mean, that was going to be a hell of a fight. Dan Hooker versus Bobby Green. I think Hooker might have edged him out, but Bobby Green's been on a tear lately. So I don't know. That was just going to be one of those really fun fights on paper, and I was hoping to be able to see that one, and you know, see how it materialized and what would happen in a fight between Bobby Green and Dan Hooker. But Dan Hooker gets injured again. The poor guy's been injury prone recently. So Jalen Turner steps in on short notice to fight Bobby Green in a lightweight fight. And Jalen Turner is 13-7, coming off of a loss to Dan Hooker, actually. So he's on a 2-fight losing streak. And I think Hooker broke his arm against Jalen Turner. Yeah, because he kicked him in the arm and broke his fucking arm. And then I guess Hooker broke it again after healing up. I think it was something like that. All I know is I remember Jalen Turner landing a nasty kick on Dan Hooker, and everyone freaking out, wondering how the hell Hooker took that kick and didn't go down, which is pretty crazy. And that's what makes Dan Hooker a very exciting fighter. But yeah, it was a split decision loss to Dan Hooker back in July. Jalen Turner is just like a fucking long guy. He's got such a small frame, but he's very lengthy, and he can connect with those punches and wrap you up in submissions as well. So he's got a little bit of everything. And you know, Bobby Green is decent on the ground, I think, for the most part, but I don't know that he's really well known for his submissions overall. But you know, he's got to watch out for those long limbs of Turner, because Turner can just overwhelm you with it and get you in those chokes and wrap you up and basically do what he wants with you. He's got a lot of submission wins, so that's something Bobby Green's got to be careful with. But you know, Bobby Green is a damn good striker. He's an exciting fighter. He's one of my favorites. I know that. My wife actually really likes Bobby Green. I think he's got swagger, so I can't blame her. But I just think she likes him as a person too, because you know, during the pandemic and stuff, like he talked about, you know, everyone needing to stop the hate and all this other stuff. Talked about the racial stuff because, you know, he's adopted. He was adopted by a white family, I guess, and so his, like, I don't know if it was his stepdad or his foster dad. I don't know. I think that's what it was. He was adopted by a white family or something like that. I don't know. But either way, was a pretty cool pretty cool little speech of his that he made, and I ever since then my wife's been pretty excited about him fighting and wants to see him fight and stuff. So anyway, he is coming off he's on a 2-fight winning streak. Actually, he got that nasty arm triangle choke over Tony Ferguson back in July, and then he fought just recently in October against Grant Dawson and won that one in the first round, KO by punches 33 seconds into the first round. Like I said, Bobby Green's been on a tear. And he knocked out Jared Gordon, even though it was a clash of heads, but he was kind of dominating in that fight. Jared Gordon was doing well, but I think Bobby Green was getting the best of him anyway. But that was a no contest, so he's 2-0 since then, and been doing big things. Here's that submission against Tony Ferguson. That was pretty impressive as well, especially against somebody like Ferguson, but he put the hands on Ferguson as well. So Bobby Green's just an exciting fighter, man, and he talks a lot of shit. If you don't like that, I understand. I don't like it a lot of times either, but Bobby Green does it in a way that is just entertaining. So it should be a fun fight to watch. So that's the co-main event. Let's get to the main event here. We got Beneil Dariush versus Arman Tsarukyan. This should be a fun one as well. I mean, Beneil has just been winning left and right, basically. He's 22-5 overall. Oh shit, and makes me a liar. I forgot he fought Charles Oliveira last in June for the title and lost that one. But you know, that's against, was it for the title? No, not for the title. Shit, I don't remember. But Charles Oliveira, that is not an easy fight whatsoever. I mean, a lot of people lose to Oliveira, and yeah, he wasn't proud of that one. But before that, he was on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 fight win streak before meeting Oliveira and losing to him. And we're talking every kind of way to win: decision, KO, KO, submission, TKO, decision. So, and he's fought a lot of big names. He was on an impressive win streak until he, fought Charles. I believe it was for the title. I don't remember. That's gonna bug me. But yeah, Beneil is just a well-rounded fighter overall. Definitely has really good striking, but he can last all 5 rounds, all 3 rounds, whatever you're doing, and take you to a decision win, or he can get you in a submission. But those hands, man, if he lands on you, you got to be careful with those hands, because he can land and drop you. That's weird. Okay. But yeah, like I said, he was on a hell of a win streak until he met Charles Oliveira. But Beneil's a great fighter. A lot of people like him. He's a bit weird for me. I've never really been a big fan of his. He's very, very religious, and it comes off a little much. Seems like the type of guy that if you saw him somewhere and you had to sit and talk with him, he'd probably just try to talk to you about religion the whole time. But I don't know. He just seems like a very kind of just awkward guy. Not your typical fighter type, but he's a damn good fighter, so I got to give him props for that. And it is what it is. Whatever people choose to do is their thing. He's a family man. Again, he doesn't live his life like you wouldn't even know that he's a fighter if you saw him in the street, because he looks very unassuming. But he, like I said, he's a killer. He's a damn good fighter. And yeah, we'll see where he goes with this one. Fighting Arman Tsarukyan. It should be exciting. Tsarukyan is 20-3. He's got good takedowns. He's got some good striking as well. Let's see, 20-3, coming off. He's on a 2-fight win streak. Joaquim Silva being his last win in June. That was a TKO by punches. Let's see. Yeah, we're looking at him trying to stand and bang in this one, guaranteed. A lot of his submission wins were way back in 2017. has quite a few submission wins there, but it seems like he's been a stand-up fighter since then. You know, good takedowns, good ground and pound. But you know, he's got decent striking overall, seems like. And let's see, 1, 2. His last loss was against Mateusz Gamrot. Shit, he's got a lot of fights in UFC. He came in, his debut was against Islam Makhachev, which that's not even fair, in 2019, which was one of his 2 losses in the UFC. Then he went on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fight win streak. 1 being against the current PFL champion Olivier Aubin-Mercier. So he beat him. He beat Matt Favola. And yeah, Joaquim Silva being the last one. Okay, sorry, reading the text. But yeah, this should be a decent fight. Looks like it could be a really good stand-up fight. Lots of good striking with both of these guys. I don't really have a favorite in this one. I don't know Arman Tsarukyan that well. And Beneil, like I said, is just not one of those guys that I like very much. He just don't click with the guy, but he's a great fighter. So hopefully this is a really good main event. The rest of the card is great. Lots of good matchups. But for ESPN, or I'm sorry, UFC on ESPN 52, that wraps that up. And that'll be Saturday, main event starting at 5 p.m. on ESPN Plus. 5 p.m. Arizona time. You'll have to account for your own time zone there. But yeah, that about wraps it up for me as well. Except for a couple other things. Oh, be on the lookout. The other podcast I do, currently called the Rumble Podcast, that I do with DJ Tommy and Magix. Tommy's been, they've both been on the Watch Party podcast a bunch of times, and I've had Tommy on going rounds on a normal episode once before as well. But yeah, we're kind of doing a little rebranding type thing here soon, so be on the lookout for that. Currently it's the Rumble Podcast YouTube channel. Go to rumblepodcast.com. It'll take you directly there. I'm sure that'll change soon. Like I said, a little bit of a rebranding type thing, maybe a little more structure to the podcast, but I think that it'll be good, and be on the lookout for that. If nothing else, Rumble Podcast is on Sundays and Tuesdays. We go live. Tuesdays are usually like a Tech Tuesday type thing. Sundays is just a random pop culture type current event discussion, whatever movies or shows we're watching, all that kind of stuff. Just fun, random fun. So come check it out. Go to rumblepodcast.com or the Rumble Podcast YouTube channel and subscribe, like some videos, and watch us on Sundays and Tuesdays live, or else watch us any other time whenever you want. But yeah, that's about it. I am getting out of here tomorrow, so I'll be happy to make my way back home. Got a few things happening this weekend, but I'll be happy to be back home and hopefully no out of town work for a little while at least. So thanks for joining in. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you always know when I'm going live or when I put out a new video. Tell a friend. Check out my social media. It's been going on down at the bottom of the screen. Going Rounds Podcast everywhere except for X, formerly known as Twitter. It is Going Rounds Pod because it doesn't like the long Going Rounds Podcast name. So go check out my social media. More active on Instagram and Facebook more than anything, but every once in a while you see a TikTok pop out. So yeah, check it all out. Thanks for supporting. Thanks for anybody that was watching live. Thanks for watching this later if you watch it later. And don't forget, you can also listen to the audio-only version on Spotify. You can also watch it on Spotify. Or you can listen to audio-only anywhere else you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, everywhere. Wherever you get them, I'm there. So check it out. Audio-only if that's what you like. Otherwise, come back here every Thursday, 7 p.m. I'll be back next week to talk about whatever's going on in combat sports and MMA. So thanks again for the support. Thanks for joining in and watching, and I'll see you next week. I'm out. Peace.